Imagine you married the love of your life, gathered your documents, submitted them, sitting now waiting on your marriage-based green card process to be completed, to be approved, and for you to begin your pathway towards US citizenship. But what if changes in the immigration policy come the end of this month could derail all your plans and then have your application either being extended or being denied? What would you do? Well, stay tuned. We are going to be going over, based on what happened in the past in Trump's first presidency, his first term, what we think can happen for his second term, how you can prevent or prepare yourself for what might be happening, and just to give you a broad picture as to what you should be prepared for. Now is not the time to worry. Now is the time to gather all the information you can, which I always give you on this channel. So stay tuned while we go through this important information of what might be around the corner for all marriage-based green card applications. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Next Level Life Hacks, where we take the next steps needed to grow towards our financial freedom and marriage-based green card application is one that has many twists and turns, many intricacies in terms of the application and just the amount of information that you need to submit, keep track of, and there are many loopholes or opportunities for denial that can happen. Well, what we're going to be going through today are some key areas that, based on past experience, are most likely to resurface or to be repeated, so that you can be prepared for what might happen. Or if you are rushing to submit your application now before January 20, certain key things that you should make sure that you include in your documentation to make sure that you are more guaranteeing your case to be approved rather than being delayed. And why does this apply to so many persons? The statistics show that 400 to 500,000 applications are put through each year for marriage-based green cards. That's a significant amount. And if you are in one of those persons who either in the past or you're going to be making up these numbers for this year, you have to make sure that you do it right from the very beginning in order to avoid more expenses and timely delays. Now, the first pitfall that we're going to be looking at is increased procedural complexities. And the main thing that we're going to be looking at that occurred in the past was the public charge rule. Now, what happened in the previous administration, the Trump administration that is that there was a lengthy questionnaire that sought to guarantee that applicants were not going to become a burden on the state. Therefore, there were certain questions put in place that asked regarding your income potential, education, the amount of assets that you had, that would cause them to possibly delay or deny your application because there is the hint or tendency or indication rather that you might become a burden. And when I say become a burden, I mean that you're going to be applying for and accessing certain state or federal benefits, then adding to the pool that is going to be pulling from these funds and then causing more expense on the government. Although the public charge rule was blocked in his first administration, there is no reason to believe that there will not be a renewed attempt to re-implement this rule. So therefore, be on the lookout, making sure that your prospects for employment or the income or assets that you are showing for your potential, that it is not going to be deemed as someone who is going to be a burden. So that's your first warning. Your second area is the higher risk for advanced parole. And sometimes we throw around these terms thinking that everyone understands the meaning, but what is advanced parole? When you apply for an adjustment of status or an AOS, one of the things that might be approved initially is your permission to travel outside of the United States until your case itself has an overall approval. Now, the rule is that although you have been granted the permission to leave the country, it is completely at the discretion of Customs and Border Patrol to readmit you into the country. Now, let's look at what happened under the previous administration. There was an increased amount of denial of re-entry back into the country by CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. My recommendation to you is that even if you currently have an advanced parole or if you get one after January 20, my advice would be to hold that travel strictly for emergency purposes. And if you are watching this or if you know someone that left the country for the holidays or just to visit family back home, I would strongly recommend that they get themselves back in the country before January 21 to secure themselves, and therefore they are not left at the discretion of the CBP team. Because what happened as well in the previous administration is that you found that the Customs and Border Patrol officers were a bit more aggressive in terms of their rulings and discretion in denying persons re-entry into the country. Because hey, if you have a leader that is tightening up on certain policies, then you will find that those persons who are the enforcers will be more aggressive to keep in line with the mentality of the leader. Now let me read a story for you as to what happened to one individual when they were granted the advanced parole and they left the country. And you might see me reading because I have not memorized the story, so I have to read it for you. So we're going to be looking at Maria, a deferred action for childhood arrival, otherwise called DACA recipient, who had applied for advanced parole to visit her ailing grandmother in Mexico. Now, she received approval for her travel document, which allowed her to temporarily leave the US while maintaining her legal status. Now, Maria traveled to Mexico for 2 weeks, believing her approved advanced parole would guarantee her re-entry into the United States. Upon her return, however, she faced extreme scrutiny at the port of entry. Now, what happened at the border? The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol CBP officer reviewed her advanced parole document but raised concerns about her reason for travel, questioning whether it aligned with the humanitarian purpose that she had stated in her application. The officer claimed Maria's departure indicated she had abandoned her status under DACA, arguing that she was now attempting to re-enter without proper authorization. The outcome is that Maria was denied re-entry and issued a notice to appear, an NTA, for removal proceedings. She was forced to hire an immigration attorney to fight her case in immigration court, where she eventually had to prove that her advanced parole was valid at the time of travel, she had not violated the terms of her status, or engaged in any disqualifying behavior. The process took over a year, costed Maria thousands of dollars in legal fees, and left her unable to return to the US, to her family, and to her work during that time. Now, what are the lessons from this case? It is showing here and reinforcing that the advanced parole is not a guarantee of re-entry into the United States. As I said before, it is left to the discretion of the CBP officer. And under more strict administration, they might very well, as they did in the past, increase their denials of re-entry into the United States. The next pitfall are the automatic NTAs. Notice to appear is what that means. Now, usually, if it is that you made a mistake on your filing documents, then you would have the opportunity to resubmit evidence or to refile your case so that it can be considered and reviewed and then inevitably approved. What happened in the past is that once there were any errors in terms of your documents or your application, there was an automatically generated notice to appear before immigration court. And then when you get that notice to appear, it means that deportation proceedings are in place. Then you would have to hire an immigration attorney, which means that your case would be lengthily delayed. It would cost you much more while you still had to be refiling your case for the immigration. Now, that happened in the past. There is no guarantee that it will not be repeated, so therefore that is something that you need to keep in mind. The fourth pitfall, and maybe the most serious one based on the topic that we're discussing today, is that there is the potential for much stricter scrutiny of marriage cases. What happened in the past is that the applications were reviewed with such scrutiny, calling into question the legitimacy of many marriages, and then asking or calling for the applicants to prove that their marriages were legitimate. And not only their marriages, to prove that their entire courting or dating process was legitimate, you had to provide affidavit from friends, verifying the validity of your relationship. You had to be showing photographs. You had to provide evidence of joint finances, life insurance, different things that justify that your relationship is legitimate. As well as there are several cases where random visits were made to the residences that you occupied to verify if you're actually living together and having an actual intimate relationship. Now, what happened in the past is that once there was a sign of doubt, then it would automatically trigger a request for an interview. Now, the moment you get a request to conduct an interview, you know that you are in trouble. You have to then go above and beyond to show that you are a real couple, asking you certain questions to make sure that you are in sync as well. Now, I have known of cases as well where the couples were actually separated in separate rooms and asked the same questions to make sure that your questions, or your answers rather, were syncing with each other to verify if you are actually in a relationship. Then if your answers did not correspond with each other, then your case would be denied and deportation proceedings would be ordered against you. What should you do now? Prepare your documents in detail. Go over everything with a fine-tooth comb, get legal representation, consult an immigration attorney to make sure that whether whatever you have put through in the past, check on the status of it, and just to review the documents that you had submitted to make sure that they are accurate. If you are rushing to submit your documents now, be careful, because when you're rushing, you tend to make more mistakes. So have them reviewed by an immigration attorney, or you can check in the description box below for our consultancy agency for us to review your documents for you and to submit on your behalf. Also, avoid unnecessary travel, as I mentioned. Keep travel to an emergency. Also, if you are an international student that is on a student visa, stop studying remotely from your home country, but get yourself back on campus or even back within the United States to continue your studies to make sure that you are secure. You also need to make sure that you are monitoring policy updates. Stop using your social media only for social matters, but get subscribed, for example, to this channel so that you can be kept up to date with the latest release of immigration information so that you can react much faster than the normal person who is not paying attention. Also, plan for any contingencies. Ramp up your savings account, stop spending unnecessarily on things, because you might need as much funds as possible to either pay for immigration attorney fees, or you might need those savings to restart your life back home, because that's a real possibility as well. In conclusion, it's time to prepare, not panic. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So therefore, get as much information, especially regarding your individual case, as much as possible so that you know any pitholes or potholes that might come along that can derail your application or approval process. As well, this additional information will help you to pivot, because there are more than one ways that you can become a resident or a citizen within the United States, but you need the information. All in all, my friends, if you know of anyone else that can benefit from this information, please feel free to share it with them as well. Thank you for watching today, and see you in the next video.